Hey, it's Darcy McConvey, and this is the Venture and Gains podcast. The purpose of the show is to connect people to other great people, ideas, and opportunities. Everyone has less than a handful of people in their network where it seems like there's something different about them. Everything they touch seems to turn to gold, and they're those can't-miss people, and you just know it. These are the podcast guests. We catch them at various stages of their career, learn from how they think, so you can connect the dots and apply it. To wrap up season 1, we've distilled it down to a few common themes. All of the themes are broken down into clips, and the clips are mostly 1 minute or less. Passion is a consistent theme. We're not reinventing the wheel here, but highlighting interesting points and takes on reality, not theory. For our guests, it's less about tactics and more about why they do things and how they think about things. When you block the themes together, it's fascinating how people from various backgrounds hammer on the same common threads. These are all great people, and I'm thankful and honored that they were guests and took the time to share insights with us. So the themes: being opportunistic in the overly planned career, advice for us all, mentality and risk-taking, providing value and using your network, the power of people, purpose, and culture, taking shortcuts, decisions and deal-making, and a few good stories to tell. Season 1 wrap-up. Here we go. Great career coaching for young and old from Andrew McDonald and Kevin Bieksa. Sometimes you can overplan your career. Be opportunistic. How do you know if you'll like something or not, or be good at it without trying it and putting some jam behind the initiative? Theory won't cut it. Here we go.
I've always been ambitious and kind of hardworking and, wanting to do really well at whatever I'm doing, but I've never had like a master plan. There hasn't been it's always sort of been try the next thing, see how it goes, try to be good at it, and then, go from there. So it's not like I went to university with some plan to be a business executive. I did an undergrad business degree, thought, hey, consulting looks interesting. Let's go try that. Enjoyed it, learned a lot, did well at it, but I don't want to do this for my life. Hey, let's go try being an entrepreneur. Did that, learned a lot, didn't succeed, as far as business outcome. But as that was sort of winding down, okay, now this Uber opportunity, that looks kind of cool. Let's go try that. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I envisioned myself ending up in this type of role because I haven't had like a 5-year plan. It's always kind of been try the next thing.
The second thing that I got some good advice about is I didn't say no to anything. So every opportunity that's come my way in the last year and a half, whether it kind of made me uncomfortable to do or not, I've tried. So I haven't limited myself. So I've tried a lot of different things. Obviously the TV thing, I've tried commentating in games, I've tried scouting, I've fielded every call, I've been involved in a couple different businesses. So I haven't really limited myself that way. And I think you can start kind of checking things off the box as you try them. So if you try something, you don't like it, there's a couple things I did and I'm like, okay, that's not for me. I don't have a future in that. And that's just a good way to kind of go about it, is you just keep checking things off instead of saying, it's not for me, and not even giving it a try, because some things do surprise you.
Some advice for us all: how to prep for a rewarding and hard journey in education, life, and business. It's not easy. Persevere and develop at your own pace.
The advice I think a lot of people would expect, but it can be a very lonely, especially upfront, and highly emotional thing to go through. And I would just be mindful of that there is, look, it's going to be lonely. It's going to be a ton of hard work. You're going to feel vulnerable in certain spots, and you're going to feel like you're on a bit of an island without much support. But, back to the passion, back to just working hard and just putting your head down. And I think just having good karma and trying to help other people out as you're growing and make sure those people have a vested interest in your success goes a long way. And not being necessarily short-term greedy. I think it's just really important to align yourself with the right people, make sure that they have a vested interest in your success. And I think good things will come from that.
I think perseverance is very important in life. And, not very few people get that smooth path to where they want to go. So for me, I always thought, okay, like I can persevere, but it takes an opportunity, I think, to get to where you want to go. I think at some point you need an opportunity, or you need kind of a little break to go your way. So I always thought in my head, well, I'm going to control the things I can control. Like I'm going to control, if we're talking about hockey, I'm going to control about my fitness. I'm going to control, my attitude. I'm going to control the way I prepare. And when I do get that one opportunity, like I'm going to make the best of it.
The problem that we've put is goals with a time metric on it, especially when it comes to our education. If you remove the concept of time, it doesn't really matter. They may be behind their specific grade level right now, but that doesn't mean in 4 years they're going to be below it. What essentially it's saying is that their learning curve is different, and allow them to graciously go through this learning curve. Let them comfortably go through it, because the more pressure that you put on them, the less I think that you're going to build a detest towards education. You're going to get a lot more fights with them. They're going to not understand why they don't have the capabilities of meeting your expectations. As a parent, you probably know this, but there's the terrible twos, right? So when you think about what the terrible twos are, is a child is in the realization that they should be able to perhaps comfortably climb chairs or have good fine and gross motor skills, but there's a lot of frustration that gets built up because they can't do it. So there's a lot of outlashing. There's a lot of yelling at mom and dad. There's a lot of there's just a lot of discomfort in their life because there's a reality that they think they should be more than what they currently are. Now, if we keep pushing them through that in their life, you're always going to have outlashing. You're always going to have issues like that. So if you have young children or even older children, let them graciously progress through life.
Love what those three had to say. Next up, mentality and risk-taking. One of my favorite notes is this idea of embedding a risk-taking approach into life and your career. Similar to the Seth Godin approach, where the obvious path may be the most risky over the long term. Don't fear the unknown. Go find your mental edge and crush it.
I would really encourage new grads to push their limits of comfort on risk-taking. So I think the number one thing, insecure overachievers, one of the number one mistakes they make is that they don't realize how long a career actually is. Because they've been on this track their whole life where they're always doing what they're supposed to be doing, i.e., high school, elementary school, high school, you're moving up each grade. If you're getting top marks, you're always doing what you should, dominating your extracurriculars. Like every year, the sequence is clear and you just got to be top of your class, right? But then once you kind of graduate out of the school ecosystem, you get out into the world, there's a risk that you fall into that trap with your career. Like you join a company and then you're just working towards the next promotion, working towards the next pay raise. And you're never going to leave that track if that's how you're thinking about the world, right? And it can be really uncomfortable to leave that track. When I left Bain, most people that were close to me thought I was crazy, walking away from a good salary to literally go make zero money and try to start something from scratch. And that made it a really hard leap to make. And then when I spent 2 years and essentially my startup was failing, I would be sick to my stomach every day thinking about, oh my God, I'm wasting time. Like if I was still at Bain, I would have got promoted this year and I would have made this much money. And I was thinking about this opportunity cost of taking the risk. And it was really uncomfortable. But what I've come to realize and what I've heard a few people say since then is careers are actually really long. You start working in your early 20s and, most people are still in the game late into their 50s, 60s, even 70s these days, right? Or 80s, people, you've got a lot of time. And if you take a longer view of your career, I think it will free you up to take some risks because guess what? If you take a risk, you go off, you do your own thing for a couple of years and it doesn't work, there's always the next move and you've got decades, right? Yeah. And so I think that's the biggest mistake. People kind of get trapped because they make good money, they're successful early, and then they feel like they got to stay on a track when really what you should be doing is taking risk, even if it doesn't work, taking a series of calculated risks through your career, I think ultimately ends up with bigger outcomes. So that's my number one piece of advice.
But as we get older, we're not scared of the boogeyman or the monsters in our closets. We're scared of our doubts and our fears. That's what it is. It's like all these little things in our lives that we have given the exact same attribution to of the same feelings of monsters that don't exist. But the reality is our doubts and fears are just like the boogeyman. They are characters or actors that we have made up in our mind. That's what it is. It's the future is going to unfold so terribly for me, and I'm going to die, and I'm going to lose all my money, and my partner's going to divorce me, and my kids are going to hate me, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are the exact same concepts of fearing the unknown. The reality is that, man, the unknown is the most beautiful place in the world, right? It's like where you get to explore. It's why we go on vacation, is for the unknown, right? Mm-hmm. It's not to go visit a place that we have extreme familiarity and we know exactly what we're going to do. It's to experience the moments that we have no idea what they're actually going to bring. So if we're constantly going to be scared of the future and think of them to be monstrous, right? And not understand that these are truly just concepts that we have made up in our mind, then we won't ever be able to shed them. So when I think about it, like when you teach, what do we have to teach kids? Is optimism.
I just think for me, I'm not as emotionally vested in when I'm chirping as other people. Whereas like somebody could say something to me and it doesn't really bother me because I feel like I'm ultimately focused on what I'm doing, whether it's playing hockey or golfing or whatever it is, right? Even if it's like a bet or a game or something. I feel like some people just don't have the emotional stability to be able to handle something that throws them off. And I've always kind of prided myself on being focused and kind of, the old cliche is mentally tough. I don't know if that's quite accurate anymore, but I feel like I know what my goal is, and it doesn't matter what you say, you can't impact that goal. And I feel like some people can be persuaded or impacted by words. So I more or less just kind of throw things out there, and I'd always kind of consider myself like a witty chirper. I like to throw things out there that the person's going to actually, after they rebuttal to me with probably something that's not intelligent, they're going to go back to the bench or somewhere else and actually think about, what did he mean by that? And that's what I love. That's the stuff that gets into people's head. But I feel like that can't happen. That can't impact me. So that's maybe why I do it so much, to see if there's other people that it affects.
Bit of a change of pace here, but these next two discuss providing value and using your network. From the CEO of a major brewery to executive coach extraordinaire, advice on what is value and how to use your network to become a master. It's right there. It's right in front of you.
At the end of the day, what I boil a good offering down to more than anything else is value, right? Because value is ultimately what a consumer wants. They want to have, and value, to be clear, like it can be something that's a real dog shit product, but then it's super, super cheap. And so you're happy. Or it can be something that is absolute luxury, but for all of that luxury, it's got a price tag that you're actually really happy with. Both of those things are great value. And, beer is ultimately no different. Like, how does this product make you feel? And does its taste and how it makes you feel match up to the price that's being asked for it? Those things are all just equal value. So the most important thing, I think, as a like food and bev company, is to make sure that you're offering someone good value for what it is.
Getting introductions is a very important aspect of how financial advisors build their business. It's an important aspect of how most people build their business. And so I was taking this young advisor through our 5-step process for obtaining introductions. And he stopped me with some irritation in his voice and said, "Norm, I know how to get referrals." And I said to him, first and foremost, take the word referral out of your vocabulary. When your doctor refers you to someone, it's because you have a problem. He thinks you have a problem. And so he refers you to a specialist. When you ask for referrals, people think, who do I know who has a problem? Who do I know who needs a financial advisor? We don't share that with many people in our social circle. Yet people make introductions every day. Darcy, if you and I were at a social gathering having a conversation and someone came up whom you knew, would you have any hesitation introducing me?
Of course not.
Yeah. People make introductions every day. So I said to him, it's not about mastering getting referrals. It's mastering the art of obtaining introductions. And at least 20, each of your best clients knows at least 20 people who are like them. Those are the people you want to get in front of. So part of the challenge is that we get to a point where we've gained familiarity with what we do, yet we have not mastered it. And taking that additional step makes all the difference in the world.
Love this one. The power of people, purpose, and culture. Bringing high energy and excitement, it's hard not to be motivated. Pat Hayes, Adrian Rocca, and Mina Mitri give different but connected views. This charges me up. Here we go.
I think the first learning was the power of culture. And what the power is that it gives you, to go back to that analogy of like the field, maybe it's not the field, it's the rules of the game. It helps normalize the way that you and I are going to be with one another.
Right.
And I think a lot of times what I see happen in businesses is there always is a culture, but most of the time it happened by accident, or it kind of like very organically emerged. And I don't want to make an organically emerging culture a universally bad thing, but I think the challenge when you're not somewhat prescriptive about it and you're not choiceful and deliberate about how you want to be is you can get all kinds of things in there that you don't want to have. And I think Bridgewater, the essence of that place to me was, do hard things, hold a really high bar for one another, and just be real with each other about what's working and not working. And I think that philosophy is an absolutely phenomenal way to go through life. And I like the fact that Ray Dalio and culture is absolutely an outgrowth of your founder. And you're going to see that in a lot of businesses. And I think Bridgewater is maybe the ultimate example of that. But I really appreciate the fact that he created that standard. Now, at the same time, I think that the other thing I learned is just how hard it is to maintain a culture, period. And maybe in particular, although maybe just in general, a culture like that was really difficult. And especially because a lot of it was around the importance of providing objective feedback, which many times is negative. And that's a hard thing for human beings to do. And so the effort that was put in to try and ensure that culture was permeating down to the very bottom level, I mean, it's a heavy, heavy lift.
When you're in your teens and 20s, the years feel like they go so slow. And you feel invincible, and the world's never coming to an end, and you're going to live forever. And as I get older, especially, I'm turning 39, next week. You think about mortality, the years are flying by, and I'm just very focused on not only, creating a bit of a legacy, but also have a positive impact on society. That's really, really important. And I feel like as these windows of opportunity to, enact change or, help make someone else's life better. And I don't mean to be hokey, but it truly is what drives me. I feel very fortunate that I found my passion. For some reason, even when I was in, school, I always loved real estate, knew I was going to get into it. And I just, wake up every day being super excited to get to work and, kind of build what we're building and do something special. And I tell anyone that joins our team, like, you really only join, don't do it for the comp, don't do it for anything else. Like, do it because you want to make a change and you really want to impact not only kind of what we're doing for our investors, but also changing people's lives as it relates to who's living in our buildings and making sure that we could bring joy to life and a sense of pride. That's what really at the end of the day drives me.
So when we hire for growth, the most important things for us are just a deep passion for the mission that we're building in Kepler. That's by far been one of the most important leading indicators of success, and people that align well with the type of ambitions we've built in the business. One of the core values we carry at Kepler is endeavoring for the 10x. And what that means is, no matter what your art may be, whether your art is financial modeling or a type of radio frequency engineering, we want you to be the master of that art. And that's something that we value very deeply. And so that's the type of personality we tend to attract at Kepler.
Would you say endeavoring the 10x?
Endeavor for the 10x.
Endeavor for the 10x. That's great. People, purpose, and culture. It's dynamite. How about taking shortcuts in a principled approach? We all know that shortcuts never really get us where we want to go over the long term. Here we have views on always wanting more, but wanting to take the easy path to get there, and not realizing that the principles never change. Matt, Pat, and Sonny doing their best Nick Saban. Here it is.
The principles never change. The weight on the bar might be different for an NFL player or the 76-year-old client. The specific goals in terms of being able to do X number of reps with X number of pounds or run a distance, those things are obviously going to be very different. But the underlying principle is the same for an executive client or a professional athlete client. And I get just as excited for those clients to see them, especially, when we talk about the clients that I have that are not professional athletes, some of these guys are incredibly successful. They are the LeBron James of the financial world. Some of these guys, some of them have started, founded, run, and sold their own very successful companies. Some of them are at the helm, presidents and CEOs of large corporations. These guys are the all-stars of their world. Just because it's not, playing sports on TV, it's no less an accomplishment. But to see them come in and set specific goals, work hard at them, endure through the ups and downs, and, whether it's 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or sometimes 21 years down the road, to see the change and to see them become better, more well-rounded, people, it's awesome. It's a blessing to go to work every day.
Like, all this stuff is it's hard. Personal development is hard. It's hard. I say it all the time, like, do the hard work. And so I think a lot of people, we live in a world where people are just looking for the easy way out, and there's a scapegoat culture and take the pill and the thing's done. And, I was just reading on Farnham Street, I forget what Shane Parrish, how he framed it up, but it's like, you can basically be an owner and be proactive in your life, or you can be like reactive. Oh, this always happens to me. Woe is me. And I just think that we are almost tragically like indoctrinated culturally to look for shortcuts. And the problem is, shortcuts never get you, they don't get you far, because you're never building the skills, the resilience, the knowledge, the network, the internal sense of agency to then like have the confidence and to have the optimism to then just face up to whatever it is that confronts you. And I think a lot of it is that, which is that I think bringing that attitude to bear every day, it's like this really amazing spiral up self-reinforcing cycle, right? Where you're like, okay, I saw myself, and I'll take it back to sports. I mean, I saw myself get my ass kicked on that play and then get up and then kick that guy's ass the next play.
I think that's like the biggest issue with humanity right now, is not knowing what you want and having it be so externally influenced, right? I think the challenges with life in itself is that because we don't know what we want, there's a concept of more. There's a concept of that I need to consistently achieve more and more and more and more. And that could be the nicer car, the nicer house, the better education for my kids, the better education for myself, the more travel experiences, the more whatever it is. It could be the more food in my fridge. It could be the bigger TV. It could be all these things. But the challenge with it, so much of this is externally influenced, and perhaps through social media, perhaps through friend groups, or perhaps that just the way we're sort of wired in society right now. It's almost inherited, or I would call it like more of a social heredity. It's like we're programmed to consistently want more. And when you're in this realm of always wanting more, you're never enough. Mm-hmm. Like that's the biggest issue. So finding that the real fine line of balance in life is the excitement for what the future will unfold for you, which will be more or less depending on the way you're going to look at it. But it's just going to be different than your current present, but at the same time being content with everything that's going on. And I think that's like the biggest challenge. And I mean, that's something I struggle with constantly, right? This the struggle of being in a capitalistic environment is the concept of more.
Those guys could give Saban a run, especially Pat. Now to decisions and deal making. Good deals are better than bad. Good decisions are better than bad decisions. Good decisions and good deal making come to life from two of the greatest. Listen up.
While we do have a lot of experience, our big thing is that we don't come in with some preconceived notion that we know how to run your business better than you, that we can just copy and paste from another company or another industry and find success. There's an element of you want to be experienced, but you also want to show a level of humility and humbleness to the operator and owner. So there's kind of walking that fine line where you have credibility, but showing a lot of deference and respect And then beyond the fact that we have a track record of doing so, we're more than happy to have them talk to people that we've worked with in the past, so they know that we're not just weaving a tale about being involved, that we actually do these things. I think a couple other differentiators are we're investing a lot of our own capital, so we're the largest investors in our fund. I think if you look at the percentage of CPS that's committed by the GPs versus a lot of other funds out there, the proportion is quite a bit higher. I think a lot of owners really resonate with that. I think there's the general idea that you treat your own capital very differently or potentially differently than you might treat your investors. So that goes a long way as well. And I think, it's really just a gradual process, right? It's not like you're going to wow them with a single meeting and a nice PowerPoint presentation. It's getting to know them, putting in the work to understand their industry, understand their business. And then over time, you really build that credibility. And more often than not, the fit with CPS seems like a good one for them, and we're able to get something done.
When people make decisions, they triangulate. They look for 3 or more sources to validate their decision making. So just as hundreds of years ago, early navigators learned that the human eye deceives. And so
that's not when you started coaching, is it?
Yeah, just about. Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, exactly.
And they recognized that the human eye deceived. So they would identify 2 other points of reference to judge the distance of a foreign object. That's how the human mind works. So when we are faced with a decision, let's say, am I going to do business with you? One part of that triangulation is my intuition, the impression I have of you. Typically, as we know, the best form of marketing is word of mouth. So I was lucky enough to get introduced to you by someone who you knew and respected, and that started our relationship off. And as a result, we were fortunate enough to get you as a client. So introductions really matter. But the third way that people triangulate today is to go to the internet. They Google you. And as you know, Darcy, when someone Googles you, the first thing that comes up typically is your LinkedIn profile, because LinkedIn spends hundreds of millions of dollars controlling the algorithms on Google that bring them up first. And so people will read your profile. They'll look at your picture, and they look at your picture to see, is this somebody I could relate to? They look at the background, at what your profile says about you. And that speaks volumes. So the way you manage the before is critical to the degree to which people will view you as trustworthy, credible, relatable, and likable.
I wanted to end with 2 great stories. One being how the IPA came to be, the India Pale Ale, from one of the most soothing storytellers there is, Sam McMeekin, and cap it off with some motivation and a forward-looking view on space in the growing space market.
Everything's got its protagonist, right? And IPA is craft beer's protagonist. And why is it that? Well, it's probably the most adventurous yet approachable version of craft beer, I guess. I say most adventurous because, lager is and will always be like the most approachable beer, even if it's the most nuanced as well. And we'll get onto that because actually you being a lager boy means that you've got no doubt a highly refined palate, because the nuance of lager is almost endless. But like IPAs are super simple to wrap your head around. It's a bigger, bolder, brasher version of a pale ale. It's steeped in history. Famous is the journey of beer going from the UK to India, and in order to survive it, got pumped up with alcohol and with hops. Before, we were shipping beers, and in the barrels they were turning bad, they were turning to vinegar, they were arriving and on Indian shores, and the poor guys and girls over there had nothing to drink because it had turned during the journey. The hops act as a preservative, alcohol acts as a preservative, so if you pump up the hops and you pump up the alcohol, then the beer survives the journey. So goes the myth anyway, and so the IPA is born really out of that.
Space, like I mentioned earlier, is becoming very mainstream today. Historically, it's been a government or quasi-government agency-led or resource that's been used. But now we're seeing the first space IPOs that are happening. If you take a look at Virgin Orbit, which is looking to build the space tourism business, you can go up into orbit, fly around, and buy a tour ride ticket to observe space like an astronaut might. They've gone public. We are also recently seeing the announcement of another space transportation business called Momentous. They're going public early 2021. And so we're seeing the tailwind of space becoming more accessible, directly leading into new opportunities that are now mainstream. It's pretty incredible to think, we're talking about space tourism here and now.
That's a wrap on Season 1. Thank you all for taking the first step into this journey with me. Season 2 will drop March 2021. I look forward to getting back at it. Things might be slightly different in Season 2, but we'll continue to barrel down this path of connecting people to other great people, ideas, and opportunities. One thing I'd love is for anyone listening is to introduce me to some great women who would be great guests, because I think it's a glaring hole in the podcast to date. On that note, stay healthy, y'all.
Darcy McConvey is a director of private capital markets at Greybrook Realty Partners and is registered under Greybrook Securities, Inc. The opinions and statements expressed by Darcy and the Venture and Gains guests are their own, and they do not reflect the opinions of Greybrook Realty Partners or Greybrook Securities. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.